Well, hello, friends. Teresa Lusk here. You are watching the Teresa Lusk Show, and I have an amazing treat for you today because you are actually going to hear from one of the young voices. But don't you think that because he's young, he is not inspirational, motivational, and out there making a change? I have Mr. Jacquez Jones. Jacquez, welcome to the Teresa Lusk Show.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on the show.
Jaquez, here's what I know about you. You're a young conservative, and we're going to talk about the story of how I met you in a little bit. But you are one of these young men that's pushing the next generation of Gen Z, and you're the vice chairman of the Texas Federation of Teenage Republicans. When do you have time to go to school and do anything else, Jaquez? Let's talk about that.
Well, I mean, politics is always time consuming and, the news cycle never stops. And so, you always have to stay one foot in and make sure that you're courteous and tedious of your time. It's definitely a time management game. But, it's a balancing game and you just have to make sure you're on your P's and Q's.
All right. So here's what I think people are going to want to know. You're a young man, okay, and let's play identity politics for a little bit because we know that the liberals did it for such a long time,
Yeah.
but you're a black young man and you're a conservative. That's really interesting. How did you get to this point where you just said, you know what, my values line up with the Republican Party or the Conservative Party? How did you get there?
Well, I grew up in the church, firstly. And so I've always had the foundation of believing in God, knowing the Bible. And it really just started. I've always had a passion. But in 2016, President Trump ran for office. And it was a tedious time because the country was on a pedestal thinking that Donald Trump was going to do all these crazy things and he was this crazy guy. And I had family members who were telling me all these terrible things about Donald Trump. And so, of course, in 2016, me being like 8 years old, I didn't necessarily know what politics was or how government functioned, but I knew I loved seeing people do the job of government and be in government. And so around 2020, when Joe Biden was in office and we saw all the catastrophes with the forcing of the vaccine and the COVID-19 lockdowns, I decided, I said, hey, they're taking my childhood. They're taking the memorable moments of me being in high school, of me going, or me being in middle school, going to these important events, and they're forcing these different things on me, like the vaccine, like the mask, and these were things I knew I was not comfortable with, and I knew it wasn't the job of the government to do. And so I took a stand and I said, this is not how government's supposed to work, and this is not what aligns with my values. Ever since I was little, I never believed in abortion. I believe that a baby is a gift from God. And so that was one of the key things that the Democrats pushed so hard for, but I just wasn't moving on. And it was also just the fact that I believe in healthcare freedom. It's your choice if you want to, be vaccinated, all these different things. And the government wasn't letting go of that.
Wow. Wow. Okay. First of all, you said so much. I think the people who are watching are like, whoa, wait a minute. I've got to catch up with him. I've got to catch up with him. Okay. So first of all, I think it's interesting that you mentioned that during the time that COVID was going on, that's actually when you decided that the government had too much overreach. And it's funny because the people of your generation, or a lot of the kids of your generation, actually seem to really support that. What exactly was going on that really made you go, wait, was it that the mask was uncomfortable? Like what made it click for you to say, this doesn't seem right?
Right. I mean, firstly, I want to express that, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. That's not something that I support. But, it was really odd to me that, the government was trying to give out something for free. When's the last time the government has given us something for free without, something coming with it? And it really was just like, we need to take a step back. And where have we gone with government? When are we going to say, enough is enough? And we, the people, have the right to say, I'm not going to take that, or no, I don't believe government should be involved in this. And it was also the time, prices were starting to rise. And so, it was a recognition that, government was too involved in my personal life. As a young person, you don't think about government doing or putting out policies that directly affect you. But when it first starts affecting you, you really start understanding, what does the government do? What is their job? And so that's when I started doing my research. And I mean, I truly believe that the government's responsibility is to provide for the general welfare of the American people. And that's it. That's it. I don't think the government should be deeply involved in the economy like they are now. I don't think the government should be, dictating the lives of the American people. It's a government nanny state is what we
Okay.
have. Um,
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So you've really taken the time to think about this. You're not just saying it, like you've really thought about it. And so one of the ways that I met you, I want to share with our viewers, is that we were actually both at a campaign event. It was election time, everybody was pumped up, everybody was excited, and you're out there with this group of people getting to know everybody. You're in line waiting to take pictures with the state senators and et cetera, et cetera. What was your first initiation into some kind of political event that had to do with conservatives? Like what was happening? Did you learn about it at school? How did you get there?
Well, I had a friend from my high school who's coincidentally the chairman of the Texas Federation of Teenage Republicans. She approached me and she said, I know that you have an interest in being in government and learning more about government, getting involved. And she said, I have a campaign that you might be interested in. And so I said, well, let me know more. And I started doing research on the candidate, and she's an amazing lady. Dr. Carrie DeMore, I got involved with Dr. Carrie DeMore's campaign during the primary season. And that's when I started door knocking and meeting people and getting connections. That's when I met Ken Paxton for the first time. I met
Mm.
state senators through her, and it was absolutely phenomenal. And that's
Wow.
really when I started my introduction into getting involved in conservative politics.
Mm. Was it just exhilarating, Jaquez? Did you just go home and go, "Oh my gosh, this was the best day ever"?
Yeah, it was super exciting. And as a 15-year-old at the time, I didn't know what I was getting involved in. I really didn't understand how, what politics actually meant. The personal relationships that politics had. And so, her introduction, or her giving me that introduction, taking me under her wing and allowing me to see, how this campaigning process goes, it was truly a blessing, I believe.
Wow.
And it was exhilarating. Every day
Mhm.
I'd come home from block walking. I would tell my mom, I met this lady when I was door knocking, and she had an incredible story about how,
Mm.
Frisco was founded and all these great things.
Hmm. So, okay, so you knocked on about how many doors and you called how many people, because you've helped with campaigns, which means that you've had to put in some work. And by the way, for those of you who are watching right now, I just want to remind you, we are on with Jacquez Jones, just an amazing, phenomenal young conservative man who is on fire to push forth a conservative movement. He was very involved during the election. You're hearing his story. So young, he's going somewhere. I can just tell you that for sure. But Jaquez, I read that you have made over correct me if I'm wrong. Was it 800 calls? Talk to me about the numbers of the way that you actually put your involvement to use.
Yeah, so I think I made 300 phone calls. I knocked on 800 doors. And it was
Wow.
really just me reaching out to organizations saying, I want to get involved in the Republican movement. I know what I stand for, and I support these candidates. It was really me, having an interest in talking and having dialogue with people and learning more about them. One of the
Mm,
great things I love about door knocking is that, you have a personal connection. You actually are able to persuade
mm,
people. You learn more about people, and you gain those critical relationships with people who've been in the community for years.
mm.
And so, yeah, I mean,
It's phenomenal.
great. And the only thing I can say is that I believe it was truly a blessing that I had that opportunity, and also, I mean, I reached out to campaigns as well. That's a great thing. And, it's always wonderful when a campaign has a youthful person who's like, I want to knock on doors because,
Yes.
a
Oh,
lot of people,
yes.
say they're grassroots and they say, I'm here to do the grassroots work, but knocking on doors and making those phone calls, making those relationships, that's the grassroots movement.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm
Yeah.
I'm I'm locked in on right now, is being a part of the grassroots movement. I don't have money, I don't have anything backing me.
Mhm.
I just have a passion, and I know that I support.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You really did get into some kind of I don't know, controversial a little bit, because there was a lot going on. I know a lot is going on in the education system, and I want to touch on that in just a second. But for those of you who are watching, I just want to remind you, you're on with Jacquez Jones, and I want you to, if you've got questions, please post them. I'm happy to let him answer these questions. But Jacquez, without we're not going to disparage anybody, because you and I are godly people. We love God, and we just but we do want to bring attention to your experience,
Yeah.
which it was it, or I should ask, was it challenging to be a conservative based on your race and based on your gender? I mean, or was it something that you found to be easy? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And firstly, I want to start by saying that when I got involved, it was really like a light switch for my family members because, it had been something I was thinking over for a while, and I had been educating myself for a while, but it was really something that shocked them. My peers have become more accepting of it. But it was definitely a shock. When you think of a
Mm,
black conservative, you don't think of a 15, 16-year-old black conservative. And I've had a lot of pushback from people. I've been called terrible names. I think my political views have been what have caused me to be called these terrible names.
mm,
Some of the worst names I've been called in my life. But that doesn't stop me because I know what I believe that God has a calling for on my life, and I'm
right.
I'm not going to stand down to anybody.
Mm,
Regardless of what people say, it's not going to stop me. I think that's only fuel to the fire of what's going on right now.
mhm,
I'll give you a perfect example. When I was volunteering with the Collin County Republican Party, we were putting up the huge street signs on the side of the highway that say "Vote for um, Steve Kennard" and all these different things. And there was a lady who drove by, and she was furious. she was very angry, and she just started yelling obscenities. And I was like, wow,
oh,
this is really what how people feel, but this is not going to stop me. And
mm.
a gentleman turned to me. He said, "Doesn't that make you feel great?" I was like,
Oh,
"It
that's
kind of
hilarious.
does."
That's so funny. Hey, that's when you know you've been officially initiated. Somebody has spoken very, very ill of you.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
is too
it's
funny.
truly like you're doing something effective.
Sure, sure. What is it going to, in your opinion, what is it going to take to shift that narrative? Because even after President Trump was elected here recently, obviously the media, and by the way, I can actually, I really think it's important to educate yourself, not just listening to the conservative voices, because you're just hearing what you want to hear when you're listening to conservative voices. I was telling somebody yesterday, I watch CNN, and they're
Yeah,
like, you and two other people, that's it, that's okay. But I'm getting the opposite information because I want to know what is going on. And I don't want to just know it from a conservative perspective. I think it's very unwise to do that.
yeah.
But in as we're talking about what's going to change now that President Trump is in, um, how can we mend those fences? Do people actually listen to you when you speak to them about why you choose what you choose? Is your generation able to hear and listen and just agree to disagree? What does that look like in your life?
Yeah, so a lot of people, unfortunately, are not able to accept opposing opinions, and I think that's the biggest problem with America right now. Is that we can hear people's opinions, but we can't accept it, or we can't listen in and say I'll take note of that. Unfortunately, a lot of people are bigots, which is the inability to hear out opposing opinions, and I think what we really have to recognize is that the First Amendment says that it protects speech that we like and the speech that we really don't like. And that's the great thing about it. I think right now what we have to do is that we have to pull ourselves apart from the partisanship that we've been hooked onto and actually do the time to do research and understand, especially with my generation. Young kids in general are not educated on politics. They don't know how government functions. They don't even know who the mayor or city council members are within their city. And so we have to do the right thing to do is to educate people, and it starts at home. Really, it's starting to educate students and kids about this is how government works. This is who represents you. This is your senators. And I think it's a very concerning issue. Matter of fact, I was a poll worker in Collin County, and there was a young female who approached me, and she said, "How do I vote for the mayor?" She said, "How do I vote for the governor of Frisco?" And I said, "The governor of Frisco." I was confused. I was like,
Hmm.
"What are you talking about?" And she said, "I want to vote for the governor of Frisco." And I said, "I believe you're talking about the mayor." And I was like, "Yeah, mayoral elections aren't happening right now." But these are the conversations that we need to have because
Mm,
if we're bringing people into voting age 18, 19, 20
mhm,
years old, and they don't know how government works or who represents them, then it's going to be a really big issue, not only
mhm.
with enthusiasm about elections and voter education, but it's also going to hamper the people that we elect. We're not supposed to go into the ballot box and just check people down the ballot. We're supposed to be educated on of the voting decisions that we have or
Yeah.
that we're making, and we're supposed to be comfortable and know that those people are going to represent our interests to the best of their ability.
Yes, for sure. So what are your thoughts on TikTok? Because I feel like TikTok educates your generation. Now, listen, I don't know that I'm in agreement with take the whole thing down, maybe make some changes. That's fine. I'm not going to get into that topic right now, but I do know that young people your age and a little bit older than you, they are getting the news from TikTok, which
Yes.
is very concerning. Although to be fair, it's not like getting it from a news network is any different right now because it's so divisive and
Yeah.
and opinion based. Both
Yes.
sides of the aisle, by the way, both sides of the aisle. Obviously, we're a conservative here, so we're going to push conservative thoughts. But do you get your news from TikTok? Do your friends get their news from TikTok? What are your thoughts on that?
Almost every single one of my peers get their news from TikTok. And it's not surprising because TikTok is very addicting.
Mm,
And it's easy because it puts out content that you like to see. And so a lot of times when my friends are speaking on political issues, I have to remind them, there's other sides of the issue that you have not been exposed to. So there's different,
that's right.
approaches that there are to certain issues. There's different things or ways you can think about certain things. And so my view on TikTok is largely positive because I think that TikTok is more than just a app for dancing and singing, but it's an app for educational knowledge. And I think one of the things that we have to be, cautious about with TikTok is that TikTok is going to put out things that you want to see. And it's not necessarily going to put out content that you might disagree with or content that you don't like because they want you to stay on the app. And so, yes, I get some news from TikTok, but a lot of the time I get my news from primary sources like Congress.gov or C-SPAN, which are great sources because they're nonpartisan. And so you can get the raw truth from them. You can
Mhm.
form your own opinions, and there's nobody in your ear telling you how to think.
I love that. I love that, especially C-SPAN, because you're
Yes.
actually watching it take place live, and you can't argue with it. The news media, whether Fox or CNN or whoever News Nation tells you, "Hey, this is what was said," you can go, "Nope, I actually watched it with my
Right.
own eyes. I watched it with my own eyes." Very interesting. So, what can people do? People who are already in politics, even political organizations, what can they do to get people like you, like yourself, and of your age group and of diverse races to get involved in to get educated first so that
Yeah.
they can really get some facts. And I'll be honest, I don't know that I know any organization that's actually taking the time to just be nonpartisan and just be educational necessarily. Now, maybe that's what your organization does. I don't know. But what can organizations and people do to educate you guys so that as because you're the next generation, like we're
Yes.
getting older, and so it's going to be your generation that's going to be moving things forward. What can these organizations do specifically?
I think it starts with the conversation. A lot of people, when they get involved or want to get involved, it's really just one issue that they've hooked onto and ran with.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
but I think that it starts with education and conversation. What do you believe? What are your core values? What are some things that you are unmovable, unshakable, unbreakable on? For me, that was abortion, really. But we
mm,
really have to start with those core conversations. And I think that mostly it starts at home because ultimately it shouldn't be what your parents think. It shouldn't be what your grandparents think. It should be how you think, and how what are the personal things in politics that really
mhm,
affect you. I ultimately think that the way that we can get young kids involved and young conservatives in particular is by highlighting some young conservatives in office and showing young kids that there is a way, and there's people out there who understand your issues, your concerns, and think like you. um, a prime example is that when I watch C-SPAN and I'm watching the committee hearings, a lot of these old guys in Congress don't know how the internet works or TikTok or any of these platforms work, and it's a little concerning. But I think that when we start highlighting some of the people who actually know how these things affect us, it really would start, getting people to have an interest. We also have to move away from partisanship. And, I'm the vice chairman of the Texas Federation of Teenage Republicans. I've worked with several Republican organizations, but some people are just tired of hearing the talking points. And we have to get real with people. We have to say the real things and say, hey, listen, I'm not coming to you as a Democrat or a Republican. I'm coming to you as an American. And we can all agree that grocery prices are high. We can all agree that, there's been a influx of people at our southern border. These aren't, partisan talking points. These are real life things.
Yeah, yes, they are. But Jaquez, I'm going to be very honest. I liked, when you're on social media, you see all the comments of people depending on which news outlet is presenting something, and it was like a lot of people, unfortunately, on the left. It was like they were blind to the prices. It was
Yes.
like they were unaware, and I was thinking, are we all living in the same nation, or where are we? Come on now, we've got crazy prices going on right now. We
I mean, and,
cannot.
and, and this is the thing that I noticed during this campaigning cycle. It shocked me because I was like, would you want to, continue with these? She's the first Black female who's going to be president of the United States, or do you want to be able to make a living and survive in the United States?
Mm.
Do you want to, push these talking points, or do you actually want to see a country that's, fueled with prosperity, where you can fill your car up with groceries, where you can go to the gas station and not have to worry about choosing between your next meal or filling up your tank? Do you want to live in a country where, your children go to thriving schools, not just public schools, but private schools as well? Do you want to live in a country that, values the freedom that we've been promised through our Constitution, Declaration of Independence? And it was like, the left was blind to these issues, and
Yeah.
it was really concerning. And so I think that one of the great things that President Trump did during this election cycle is that he just talked, and he said, this is what's happening in this country. This is not normal. And a lot of people recognize that, and they said, he was president in 2016, and I noticed that my grocery price and my grocery bill wasn't this high. I noticed that my gas prices weren't this high. I noticed that I could make a living and I was thriving. And now, it's like the whole world just did a 360, 180.
Yeah, I think a lot of people learned their lesson for sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think there's still a lot of people in denial, and hey, we're going to
Yes.
let them figure that out, because I think in the next couple of years, for sure, we should start seeing the difference in our economy and our finances and things of that nature. I was talking with somebody yesterday, and I always tell people I'm okay with agreeing to disagree. We may or may not have the same points, even when we're conservatives. There's obviously conservatives that I don't agree with all the time on every single thing. But I said something yesterday because President Trump said, he's doing away with DEI, which I think is phenomenal. He said, no more based on race. It's now going to be based on merit, which I think is fair. I think if we want to get past racism, we really do have to start getting away from some of that. But the truth is that we're not going to be fully able to get away with it from it completely. And
Right.
here's why. DEI, yes, but the whole kind of identity politics of, I'm a Black woman, I'm a Hispanic woman. I mean, that's one of the things that's on my website. I'm a Latina woman. And the reason why I did that is because I knew that the Democrat Party was using race and gender and how you identify, et cetera, to gain their supporters. So knowing that they had such a mass reach, especially like the Latino community, the liberals had such a mass reach because they have the Spanish networks on their side. So
Yes.
during the election cycle, I was actually watching as much Spanish news as I could, because I wanted to see, what are you telling my people? What are you saying? How are you brainwashing them, etc.? So my point is this. I don't believe that we're going to be able to get away from identity politics. And I know that's going to tick off a lot of conservatives. And I can say that as a Latina, and I'd be interested to see what you could say as a young Black man. How do you get away from that when that is one of the strongest talking points for the Democrat Party, that if you are part of the Republican Party or conservatism, that you are racist, that you are all these things? I don't think we're going to be able to fully get away from speaking to race, whether people like it or not. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is a question that's been asked me multiple times because, me being a Black conservative at 16 years old is abnormal. And so truly, I agree with you. I don't think that we'll ever be able to get away from the identity politics of it. Um, Ultimately, when I talk to people when I'm outdoor knocking, they want to see somebody who looks like them. And that's just the truth. They want to have somebody who's able to connect with them. They want to see somebody who has gone through the same walks of life that they've gone through.
Yes.
And that's the same thing with me. I look up to, conservative commentators who are Black, and that's okay. I think that
Yes, it
that's
is
one of the
okay.
yeah, I think that that's one of the great things that the Republican Party needs to embrace. That we need to start pushing forward these minorities, because when you start putting people in front of these Democrats who've been listening to this identity politics for so long, they cannot use that any longer. It's not a talking head
Right.
anymore. It's
Yes.
now wow, this is something new and I might need to
Hmm.
listen in, or how did they become a conservative, or different things like that.
Yes.
And one of the things I also want to mention is that we're a country that's made up of different creeds, colors, walks of life, and people conglomerate to people who have had the same experiences as them. That's just the truth. If I'm
Yeah.
able to relate to somebody, or I'm able to see somebody in politics who's, as I say, just real,
Yeah.
I'll start listening to them more, or I'll be accepting of their
Hmm.
opinions and be able to listen in
Yes.
more.
Yeah, and I think those are beautiful statements, because again, the Conservative Party needs to embrace this, whether
Yes,
they like it or not. It's time to get over it, and the reason for that is, first of all, we have a right to embrace our race, our ethnicity, our
that's right.
culture. Like, we are Americans, but there's still things that make us different, and that's on purpose. Like,
Yeah,
that was God's idea. Can I just say that was God's idea? And it's a perfect idea. It's a perfect idea. And so it's okay. I think that the Democrats have just twisted it so much, so it leaves a bad taste. It also, though, makes them seem like they are not as open or as inviting to people who are not of the white race, et
yeah,
cetera, et cetera. So I think it's definitely important. I also think it's important to start putting these faces. Again, I was having a great conversation with somebody yesterday, and I said, said the same exact thing that I just shared with you. And I said, I think it's going to be very important that we start putting people up front and letting them see these faces of
yes,
diversity,
yeah,
because when I go to certain political clubs, it's usually mostly white people. And listen, I'm okay with it. I don't care. I'm not moved by who is in the room. But if we want to really attract people to just hear what we have to say, there has to be representation. So
and
I'm
I
looking forward
just
to see.
I want to touch on one thing. Kevin McCarthy said the Republican Party looks like the oldest country club on earth, and that's true. That is so
It is
true.
true. It's true.
We've got to start looking like a reflection of America. And
Yeah.
as much as we've heard the DEI and all that talk, which I'm adamantly opposed to DEI,
Correct.
but we, as much as we've heard all those things, we've got to start elevating some of these voices that are not just white men. And
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
it really does make people chime in. That's
Yeah.
how Candace Owens got her start. She was a Black female, and she started
Yeah.
talking about the conservative movement and how she knew that she was a conservative, and people
Yeah.
were shocked that this was even a
Hmm.
thing. Brandon Tatum,
Right.
that's how he got his start. He was a police officer, and he was a Black
Hmm.
man, and during
Yeah.
the BLM protests and the riots across the country, he said, something's not right about this. And as a Black man,
Mm.
opposing BLM, that was something that was very controversial at the time. And
Yes, of
so,
course.
these stories that come out of people realizing that they are conservative, who are not just white men, are incredible
Mhm.
stories of people reconciling with themselves and saying, hey, you know, this is not right. Something that's going on
Yeah.
is not right, or it doesn't align with who I am. And so I'm going to
Mhm.
start investing myself in learning more about the conservative movement, learning more about what it means to be a Republican, what Republican ideals are, and
Yeah.
some of these candidates. And that's, where we're seeing this great push from,
Yeah.
different people from different backgrounds of life, Black, white, red,
Yeah.
yellow.
For sure. And you may not agree with every single thing that our party represents, and that's
Yeah,
okay. But if the core, the core is the things that really matter to you, pro-life, economy, et cetera, then that's how you'll vote. It's not like every single thing that people, and there's a variety of conservatives, right? You may think something that I don't, or agree with something that I don't, and vice versa. Um, as we wrap this up, Jacquez, tell me, what do you see for yourself in the future? Like, you running for president? What are we doing here? What are we doing?
Well, anything that I do politically is always a conversation to have with God. A lot of people that I
Mm.
talk to in politics, they always, or a lot of people who I talk to, elected officials in politics, always say, you have to be a little insane to run for office.
Yes, you do.
And it's really a test of time to see, can you
Mm.
stand? Can you, fight for not only yourself, but the constituents that you want to represent? And so in the next 10 years, I would probably see myself either in office, in elected office, and representing constituents, and wherever that may be, whether that be on the school board or in the Senate, um, or in the House of Representatives, or working with organizations across the state of Texas to advance the conservative movement, particularly in urban communities. Advancing that message into these Democratic strongholds, and sharing what it means to be conservative and how they can get involved and what we want to do to help these communities.
That's wonderful. That's beautifully, beautifully said. I know for a fact that the Lord has some amazing plans for you, and I just know that you are going to walk them out and obey. One last thing, what do you have to say to your young friends, those who are like, you know what, I hate Trump, he's horrible, he's a Nazi, just these crazy things. What would you say, just honestly, an honest statement that would just make them go, all right, I'll back off and maybe really study something for myself? Because I don't think that in what I'm asking you to say, I'm not asking you to convince them to be conservatives. I'm asking you to say something that will help them go, okay, this whole world of politics demands me to approach it in a wiser way.
Yeah. Firstly, with any person that I see is getting like upset with politics, I always say, take a step back and breathe. It's going to be okay. The world's not crumbling down. Things are going to be okay. And I also make a point to say that, we have to understand that we have to do our part, and we have to make sure that we're actually looking at the brand scope of everything, not just Democrat or Republican, but how firstly, before anything, we have to learn how government works. We have to learn how government works. We have to learn what civics is, and we have to understand what our duty as the American people is. And to young people, I say, who are you? What are some core beliefs that you are unshakable, unbreakable, unbeatable from? And are you willing to stand? Are you willing to fight for those views? Are you willing to, sacrifice some things in your life to make sure that you truly are advancing these movements and these different things that you believe in? And ultimately, it's always something that you have to consult with God with, because politics is not for everyone. It's not
No,
for everyone. It's not for the weak, for sure.
no.
And I've learned that, during the primary process in Texas, that's been something that's been very, very tedious. And so,
Yeah.
politics is not for everyone, but
Mhm.
you have to do your job as a young person, as an American, and educate yourself. And you have
That's
to,
right.
be accepting that not everyone's going to accept everything that you believe in, but you have to be
Mhm.
willing to listen to it, and you have to be willing to, just think about it and,
That's right.
take a breath on it.
That's right. That's beautifully said. Beautifully said. Well, there you have it, my friends. You just got to hear the amazing Jacquez Jones, who has definitely a future or two or three in politics, no doubt. Okay. So make sure you go for it, Jacquez, with whatever the Lord puts on your heart. And you know what? This young man is available for more media presentations. He's available for your speaking events. Go ahead and reach out to him. Where can people find you, Jacquez?
So you can find me at Jacquez Jones, no spaces, Jacquez Jones, Jacquez Jones, TX on X. You can find me on the same on Instagram, and I'm available. You can find me on Facebook as well at Jacquez Jones. I'm available, and I really am passionate. I know what I believe, and I truly want to help anybody who's willing to accept my help in advancing the conservative movement and educating young kids. That's my big thing: uniting, educating, exciting kids about politics, about Republican politics, and getting involved. They can find me on all those handles, and I'd be more than blessed to take those opportunities up.
Awesome. Well, there you have it, my friends. Thank you so much for watching today. Make sure you comment something encouraging to Jacquez so he can keep on going. I know he would be very, very encouraged just to hear some encouraging words. Let him know why it's important to hang in there. You know, being a young person in this time is not an easy thing, with or without politics. And then you add politics to that. So it just makes
It's
it
a
a
whole
little
new world.
tougher. Yes, it is. My friends, I thank you so much for joining us today. We've had such a phenomenal time. Don't forget to share this. Inspire the world with the voice of one young person. Maybe somebody else will change their mind and say, you know what? I'm not going to turn into a Republican, but I'm going to start doing my homework. And then maybe they'll start making some different decisions. God bless you. I'm Teresa Lusk, and we'll see you again soon.